help us out, though. Hey, are you listening? Hey!
As soon as I arrived in Resident Evil Village's sinister rural setting, its Resident Evil 4 influence reared its snarling head. It's an intense welcome that serves as a fantastic flashback to the opening of Shinji Mikami's magnum-toting magnum opus, and one made all the more frantic in first-person perspective. Resident Evil Village might not break much new ground in its own right, but it successfully grafts Resident Evil 4's best action elements onto the series' more modern form established in Resident Evil 7, making for a genuinely engrossing and increasingly combat-heavy continuation of the Ethan Winters story. It's a story that, unfortunately for poor old Ethan, goes from dire straits to dire wolves. Dragged to hillbilly hell and back in an effort to rescue his wife in Resident Evil 7, he now finds himself dropped into a distinctly Transylvanian type of terror in Village.
Where the hell am I?
This time it's his infant daughter who must be saved after she's kidnapped by a wicked cabal of monster maniacs. And although admittedly none of them managed to conjure up the same kind of genuine scares as the southern fried psychopaths in Resident Evil 7,
You're stupid.
I found a lot of them to be entertainingly twisted in a slightly cartoonish Batman villain kind of way.
Lycans and gentlemen!
Each presides over their own visually distinctive domain that you must survive, with noticeable shifts in mood between each setting. One demands a more stealth-driven approach, while another takes a departure into more psychological horror than combat. Delving into the darkest corners of Village's world and uncovering the real reason these fairy tale freaks have come into existence in the present day, made for a compelling mystery that hooked me throughout my 10-hour playthrough.
Death has visited them all.
One of Resident Evil 7's most notable shortcomings was the lack of variety in its enemy types, but Village remedies this by throwing a significantly broader set of nasties into your crosshairs. In fact, the last time there was a lineup of Village people this diverse, they were singing disco songs about the YMCA. This expanded roster of bloodthirsty beasts doesn't just make for a more interestingly evolving series of combat encounters, but it also adds some welcome new depth and decision-making to the bolstered crafting system. Should you spend your scarce supply of scrap to cobble together a landmine that will blast the armor off one of the tank-like Lycans, or fashion it into sniper rifle rounds so that you can eliminate nesting gargoyles from afar before they have a chance to swoop down on you? Granted, most of these enemies aren't particularly clever in their own right. The genetically modified mutants of this underground Frankenstein factory might have deadly drills for arms, but they're far from the sharpest tools in the shed when it comes to outmaneuvering you one-on-one. Still, what Village's variety of grunts may lack in smarts, they certainly make up for in sheer numbers.
There's no end to them.
And although I rarely encountered clusters of more than a handful of enemies at a time for the first few hours, by the story's end I was gleefully indulging in chaotic levels of carnage that reminded me more of a run-and-gun Call of Duty campaign than a slow-paced horror game. That's a pretty big change from the philosophy of Resident Evil 7's first half, and a throwaway reference to military training in the prologue is used to explain why Ethan feels substantially more combat ready this time around.
Military training, it all happened so fast.
He's better equipped to stay on the move during a scrap, and can even shoot down flaming arrows Leon Kennedy style. Certain location-specific environmental features also help to further even the overwhelming odds, and freshen up each fight as you move from one unique area to another.
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters.
The Duke, a tubby trader who can be conveniently found in various locations around the map like a Transylvanian 7-Eleven, allows you to buy weapon add-ons and upgrades as well as limited amounts of medkits and ammunition. But what I appreciated the most about Capcom effectively resurrecting Resident Evil 4's merchant is that the Duke's stiff prices forced me to pore over every square inch of Village's stunning scenery in search of treasures to trade for spending money, which had the knock-on effect of leading me to a number of surprises, both pleasant and malevolent.
Some treasures still lurk in this village.
Studying your surroundings for the telltale glint of a valuable gem or keeping an ear out for the creak of an item-carrying birdcage aren't the only ways to unearth rewards for backtracking and exploring off the beaten path. Animals can be tracked down and killed, with their meat turned into dishes that give permanent boosts to Ethan's health and defense. I definitely took some dark delight in slashing at a yard full of chickens with Ethan's pocket knife. Check it out, this is what Link sees every time you play The Legend of Zelda. No wonder he's too traumatized to speak. Elsewhere, there are countless invaluable story morsels that tie the village's inhabitants to the Umbrella Corporation, as well as entirely optional mini boss fight encounters that in some instances manage to completely blindside me. It's clear that this Resident Evil isn't just called Village so that Capcom could awkwardly shove the Roman numerals for 8 into its logo, but because exploring the village itself is a central part of the experience. And although you visit each of the main villains' lairs in a set order, keys and other tools found along the way unlock new paths and secrets that make your return trips through Village's main hub a consistently rewarding journey. However, my trip through Resident Evil Village wasn't entirely without its missteps. I'm not sure Capcom was prepared for how much of a phenomenon Lady Dimitrescu would become with the Resident Evil fanbase, because despite the horniest hopes of internet perverts,
Oh, be careful what you wish for.
her appearance is certainly intimidatingly long-legged, but also disappointingly short-lived. She arrives very early on, is reasonably easy to avoid as far as stalker enemies go, and isn't as big a presence as you might expect from Village's billboard-sized poster girl. Her 3 daughters, meanwhile, all share the exact same weakness, and thus your fights against them all play out in almost identical fashion, though I will give them credit for never failing to jolt me out of my seat with their unpredictable arrivals.
Play with me some more!
Ah, stop that. In fact, many of Village's boss encounters come up surprisingly short in a strategic sense. While they certainly escalate in scale and spectacle as you get closer to the story's climax, very few amount to much more than circle strafing and shooting them in their glowing bits until they drop. I would have welcomed a few more epic-sized showdowns that engaged my brain as much as my reflexes and ammo reserves. While there's not much to puzzle out when it comes to tackling bosses, there's just as little thinking involved when it comes to tackling Village's actual puzzles. As was the case in Resident Evil 7, the solutions to the bulk of Village's brain teasers are either exceedingly straightforward or, in many cases, entirely spoiled for you by instructional notes left in their immediate vicinity. I can understand the developers' reluctance to allow our forward momentum through the story and action sequences to stall, but that seems at odds with an experience that otherwise clearly wants you to regularly slow down and examine your surroundings. Once Village's story has been finished, you gain access to Mercenaries. This Time Attack Arcade mode, which debuted in Resident Evil 3, returns with a few new gameplay tweaks and serves up some high-speed survival horror shooting that's only a few distorted guitar riffs away from actually passing as a Doom. Taken from Village's campaign. Simply surviving isn't too taxing, but identifying the optimal path to the level goal and keeping your kill streak combo going is paramount in order to achieve some fairly challenging high score goals. An extra layer of strategy has been included this time around in the form of special ability orbs, which allow you to activate perks such as more high-powered headshots or exploding enemy corpses. I'm finding this revival of Resident Evil's long-dormant Mercenaries mode to be an addictive bonus that I've already spent several hours with as I continue to chase those elusive S and SS rankings and their resulting special weapon unlocks.
Ah, Jesus Christ!
Roaming the streets of Resident Evil Village is like visiting a disturbing and deadly Disneyland, where every attraction is a house of horrors. I got just as big a thrill out of reveling in its frenzied violence as I did retracing my steps through the gradually revealed recesses of its sizable village setting to uncover the darkest story secrets of its monstrous main cast. Boss fights are a bit of a letdown, but the great variety of enemies throughout keeps things tense. The fact that it's very much a throwback to the fast-paced action of Resident Evil 4 also means it largely takes a step back from the slow burn scares of Resident Evil 7, which may well disappoint those who prefer more psychological dread to blowing off heads. But if you have an itch for action-heavy survival horror, then Resident Evil Village will scratch it like a fistful of Lady Dimitrescu's freakish fingernails. For more IGN reviews, check out our verdicts on Returnal and Total War Rome Remastered, and for everything else, stick with IGN.
Lena?
I said no!
There's nothing quite like using a fire-breathing T-Rex to beat the crap out of a dragon to recapture that childhood joy of smashing action figures together. In a series built on exciting moments, it's impressive that Monster Hunter Rise still manages to surprise and delight with things like this. At the same time, its progression can feel a little flatter than that of Monster Hunter World at their launches, making it feel more like a foundation waiting to be built upon for now. But after spending dozens of hours getting used to Rise's wonderfully enhanced mobility and faster pace, it's going to be hard to ever go back to the way things were before. If you're new to the series, Monster Hunter is essentially a gauntlet of epic boss fights against spectacularly diverse monsters, who you then turn into nice pairs of pants. Each victory earns you materials to craft better equipment, to take down tougher monsters, and so on and so forth. Success relies on a healthy balance of preparation and skill, and it's kept fresh by the combination of 14 radically different weapon types, the strategic puzzle of breaking specific parts of a monster, and the intoxicating allure of that next piece of gear. Monster Hunter Rise in particular is full of fun new ideas, but it also benefits from many of the streamlined innovations that helped make World the best-selling game in the series. Things like load-free maps and using items while moving feel vital after having now spent hundreds of hours with them. Meanwhile, other features like separate village and hub quest lines for single and multiplayer return some of the organization of older games. That mishmash of ideas makes Rise feel like a huge mechanical step forward compared to the last Switch entry, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, but more of a sidestep in the context of World and its Iceborne expansion. That said, Rise literally takes a massive leap forward of its own by introducing the Wire Bug. This recharging resource lets you scale mountains, cover vast distances, and use special Silkbind moves unique to each weapon. But potentially the most impactful Wire Bug move of all is far more subtle. If you get knocked back, pressing ZL and B will instantly pop you back up onto your feet with your weapon sheathed, letting you quickly re-engage or heal up without missing a beat. That has a big impact on the pace and feel of a fight relative to other Monster Hunter games, cutting out lots of potential downtime. That's the philosophy of Rise in a nutshell. Fill the dead air and get to the action quicker. To that end, you get an adorable, rideable doggo to travel faster, and a bit of the usual pre-hunt prep has been morphed into mid-mission endemic life, allowing you to pick up creatures along the way that can fill the gap of certain tools, buffs, and items. The most important of these are the colorful Speary Birds, which boost your stats up to a certain point. It's very smart that these buffs are gained through exploration rather than menu management, though spending the start of every hunt collecting birds can become a different type of tedious. The expanded monster riding is a similarly fun but odd addition. Once you've subdued a monster, Rise gives you full control to move and attack, just like your dog, even letting you drive them across the map to beat up a specific target. It really is a blast, but it's also weirdly easy to trigger. That means the other monsters are now basically just tools to be used, not much different than the tiny endemic life pickups. That Rajang I used to fear is little more than a club to be wielded in Rise, which is certainly entertaining, but I don't think even the notorious Devil Joe's chaotic interruptions would be as impactful here if it were in this game. But goodness gracious, what good monsters there are to fight. Every single one of the brand new monsters is an absolute banger. From the bird monkey Bishaten throwing persimmons at you, to the fire crane Actisom and its extremely cool armor set, they're all excellently designed. The wide variety immediately available is impressive too, offering a lot of choice fairly quickly. Of course, the small drawback of that approach is Rise also peaks quicker, leaving the second half of its progression a little less surprising. The good news is that once you reach high rank in the hub, these fights are made fresh again by introducing new moves and more aggressive behaviors. That's not a new trick to the Monster Hunter series, but it is one of its most important. Rise's funkiest new addition is its Rampage hunts, which have you set up defenses to protect against waves of monsters like a tower defense game. It's a fun novelty, reminiscent of past siege fights like Kolve Teroth, but with more control and against significantly weaker monsters. Playing with a party makes the multitasking madness more satisfying too. One person can man a turret, while another places defenses, and a third works to reduce the cooldown on powerful super weapons like this. Rampages are undoubtedly amusing, but the fact that they never change a whole lot strategically does cause them to wear a little thin. The few Apex monsters that cap off some high-rank Rampages are the real return draw, but eventually I just wished I could fight those without the tower defense preamble. That said, Rampage rewards do unlock some cool customization. Weapons have specific skills you can use Rampage-exclusive tickets to enable for extra bonuses, and there's even a distinct Rampage weapon of each type that acts as a sort of blank slate to modify to your liking. Couple that with the new switch skills that let each weapon swap specific moves to alter their combos, and Rise introduces a welcome dose of playstyle control from past Monster Hunters that World streamlined away. It's a shame. Great, I never want to give them up. The post-launch content updates Capcom is teasing can't come soon enough, but Rise is still already a thrilling step forward toward the new normal World so boldly introduced. For more Monster Hunter Rise, be sure to read my full written review on IGN.com, or watch an Apex Arzuros Rampage. And for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.
Yeah!
Long ago, a young girl went with her mother to pick berries for her father, who was hard at work. But the forest greeted them with a dark, cold silence, the bushes empty.
Welcome to the Capcom E3 Showcase. I'm your host, Rachel Querico, aka Seltzer, and I'll be your guide as we walk through the latest releases, news, and updates from Capcom. We'll hear from the Resident Evil Village team, share some news from the world of Monster Hunter, and get the latest on Ace Attorney. Then we'll wrap up with some updates from our friends at Capcom Fighters. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Our first stop today, Resident Evil Village. The Resident Evil franchise continues to pioneer the latest and greatest in survival horror. The team has been blown away by the response to Resident Evil Village, which launched last month. It brought the world another chapter in this decades-long story as the franchise celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. I'm honored to be able to introduce Tsuyoshi Kanda, producer on Resident Evil Village, with a special message for the fans.
Another time.
Bye-bye.
There's nothing to fear.
Where's Rose? She's everything to me.
I think it's time you left things in my hands. Go on, rest now.
Hi everyone, my name is Tsuyoshi Kanda, producer on Resident Evil Village. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's played since we launched the game in May. We hope you're enjoying this new chapter in survival horror. As a reminder, everyone who purchases Resident Evil Village will gain free access to our online multiplayer title, Resident Evil Re:Verse, where players go head-to-head with their favorite Resident Evil heroes and bioweapons. I'm now happy to announce that Resident Evil Re:Verse will go live next month across all supported platforms. So head into the fray to celebrate the Resident Evil 25th anniversary.
Thank you, Kanda-san, for that wonderful update. Next up, some long-awaited news from the world of Monster Hunter. Whether it's adventuring alongside monsters or battling them with friends, we've got something for you. First, let's dive into the brand new story-based RPG entry to the series, Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin.
This was his fate. Red may have been strong and skilled, but against the awesome power of nature, he was merely a man. He never stood a chance.
All around, things just kept getting worse. But I heard that Guardian Ratha had survived and returned to Hekolu Island. I went there to see Red's old monster again. Then, of course, that's when I met you.
You were given Red's kinship stone and now a Rathalos egg. This is destiny.
This is the legendary monster, Ray's Wing Ratha, the monster with the wings of ruin.
It's said that a beat of its wings can bring about waves of destruction.
Many people believe there's a connection between the strange happenings and the wings of ruin. The pits are appearing everywhere, and they're emitting a strange light.
What's this whole idea of forming kinship with monsters? How do you control them?
It's not about control. Monsters help riders of their own will. And the bonds between monsters and riders are just like your bond with Tsukino.
What kind of power does Ratha really have? Why are all of these pits appearing? And who are those people who want to take Ratha for themselves? All I have are questions.
If there's worry or doubt in your voice, Ratha will become anxious too. He needs to know that you will protect him no matter what.
I can sense the flames of his life force weakening. The burden of such great power is too much for his body to bear.
A voice. Can you hear it?
Riders can bond with monsters. Surely you can groove with fellow humans.
They have the power of kinship. They're friends. They're monsties. Humans carry the strength of everyone they meet. That makes them strong. My friends here taught me that. I believe in the strength of humanity.
Looks pretty epic, right? And how about that announcement? The canine companion Palamute from Monster Hunter Rise will be joining Monster Hunter Stories 2 as one of the new monsties in the first free title update coming soon after the game's release. You can get an early peek at the game with the Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin trial version starting on June 25th, which also carries your progress over to the full game release just a few weeks later on July 9th. That's not the only way to join the hunt. Millions of you made Monster Hunter Rise a huge success earlier this year, and we have even more content coming, including a new collaboration on the Rise. Let's find out more.
Let's go! This is for my fellow hunters!
Rathalos is no runt. Moon's blessing emerge. Get ready. I have a good feeling. What will it be? Moon's blessing emerge.
Tamura is like my second home.
You think you can take on Rondine?
There has never been a better time to be a Monster Hunter fan, with all the new updates to Monster Hunter Rise and the launch of Monster Hunter Stories 2 this summer. We can't wait to hear about your own stories of adventure. Well, that's not the only thing Capcom has in store for us this July. Fans of Phoenix Wright will have new chapters to explore with the release of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. North American and European future attorneys will finally be able to get their hands on the Great Ace Attorney Adventures and the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, which were previously only available in Japan. You'll travel back in time to the late 19th century Japan and London to play as Ryunosuke Naruhodo, Phoenix Wright's ancestor, in this action-packed prequel. Now, let's hear more about the story.
So then, let us unravel this mystery.
Welcome to the centre of the world. Great Britain's mighty capital, London.
This country is incredible. I will become a lawyer. I have to.
So then, let us unravel this mystery and discover what events led to this curious murder. Who are you? Herlock Sholmes. You must have heard of me.
We must solve this case, Naruhodo-san.
Let us engage in the art of deduction, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, what have we here? It would seem the truth is now tantalizingly close.
The defense demands its right to a cross-examination. Objection! Your testimony completely contradicts the facts.
Objection! My lord, with all due respect, this is an outrage!
You're the best lawyer in the world.
So we have 10 new cases and 8 mini escapades where you can take on the role of a defense attorney. Now, we all want to see some gameplay, right? Let's take a closer first look at 2 gameplay features new to the franchise in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles: Dance of Deduction and Summation Examination.
Hello, I'm Jonathan, Capcom's marketing brand manager for the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles.
So this is the capital of Great Britain.
Where to?
The Supreme Court in Whitehall, if you wouldn't mind.
The Capcom team is thrilled to present 2 new gameplay features, Dance of Deduction and Summation Examination, coming to the Ace Attorney series.
While investigating to prove your client's innocence, players will come across conspicuous situations that require further examination with the help of Ryunosuke's legal aid Susato and the brilliance of deduction from Detective Herlock. Herlock will proceed to present his logic and reasoning spectacular, a grandiose yet flawed series of conjectures.
Ryunosuke and Susato will then discuss to correct the flaws in Herlock's deductions. At this point, players will be prompted to search for clues that help identify the errors in the detective's logic and reveal the truth to the mystery. As players present new evidence and observations, Herlock will amend his deductions based on the new information. Upon uncovering the truth, Ryunosuke and Herlock enter into a semi-metaphorical, semi-literal dance that brings them to the conclusion of the dance of deduction.
In courtroom battles, players will attempt to convince 6 jurors of the innocence of their client. Their progress will be displayed and represented by 2 scales of justice, one black, representing a guilty verdict, and one white, representing a not guilty verdict.
Objection!
In summation examination, take the stand to face off against the jurors, all of whom provide explanations as to why they've reached their guilty verdict.
You'll have to identify conflicting statements and sway the jury in your favor. Examine each statement carefully and select 2 contradicting jurors to call out the flaws in their logic.
Objection!
Be ready to provide evidence from the court record to help prove the contradiction in their claims. When you successfully point out one of these contradictions among the jurors, you might just change their minds, too. With a slam of their fist, each juror you persuade will send a fiery ball towards the scales above and literally tip the scales of justice in your favor. Bring each contradiction to light and persuade the jury to help prove your client's innocence.
Objection! My lord, with all due respect, this is an outrage!
This has just been a small taste of the exciting new gameplay features in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We are very excited to get this game in the hands of both new fans and diehard fans alike. Thanks for watching.
It already seems like I have a bunch of games to catch up on. There are some exciting new adventures and titles to look forward to. Well, that's a look at the new premieres from Capcom, but what about esports? Let's close out today's showcase with a few words from 2 of the stars of Capcom Fighters, Rob TV and Vicious. They'll tell us what's been going on with Capcom esports, including updates on the Capcom Pro Tour, Intel World Open, Street Fighter League, and all the other content on Capcom Fighters. Over to you guys.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Capcom esports presentation for E3 2021. My name is Vicious, commentator for the Capcom Pro Tour as well as Street Fighter League, here with competitive Street Fighter V player and host extraordinaire, Hollywood, Rob TV. What's going on, Rob?
Oh my goodness, Vicious, host extraordinaire. That just sounds beautiful. It has a ring to it, and I think that's the perfect word to describe what we have for everyone today. Street Fighter V, Capcom E3, it just feels right, and you feel the electricity in the air.
Nice!
Nice!
What? That was nasty!
And there might be some people at home, Vicious, who don't fully know what competitive Street Fighter V is. The long and the short of it is this. We travel all around the world, state to state, country to country, and we try to bring our opponent's life bar from 100 all the way down to 0 and feel pretty goddamn good doing it.
That's right, Rob. If you think you're the best in your region, Sign up for Capcom Pro Tour to prove it and become possibly a world champion at Street Fighter V.
The double perfect, the way he looked at the camera.
Yikes! Don't ever expect another man's controller.
So in this year's CPT overall, it's a series of tournaments that have $5,000 on the line for each tournament. But that money alone, that's not what's really at stake here. It's about making it to the granddaddy of them all, Capcom Cup.
Item just reset in grand finals of Capcom Cup.
So behind me, you can see in all of its glory, the Capcom Pro Tour 2021 official stage and set, and that's a place that you are very, very familiar with.
That's right, we take all of our events and broadcast it live from this stage, and we check out all of the top competitors from each and every one of these regions. And speaking of, the Capcom Pro Tour has shaped up a lot. 2021, we have 32 events going on in the Capcom Pro Tour, spanning across 19 different territories. So there's so many opportunities for players from around the world to get that ticket into Capcom Cup this season. I'm absolutely excited because, again, that is a big change from what 2020 was into what we could expect for 2021. And Mago is your first qualifier for Japan for the Capcom Pro Tour. Not only can you catch the Capcom Pro Tour live on the Capcom Fighters channel, you can do so on a plethora of platforms. We have it on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Of course, if you don't catch it live, you can also check out the VODs for all the competitive studying you would need to become a successful Street Fighter V player, as well as catching some of the community-focused content that we have on Capcom Fighters. We have No Neutral, the official pre-show of the Capcom Pro Tour. We have sets where we take players from around the world and play off in an exhibition first to 10. Not only that, actually, we do have Street Fighter League that's happened season after season, non-stop action, 6 teams of 3, duke it out in this battle tournament series to see who will walk away with the championship and the $150,000 prize pool.
Street Fighter League is something that you don't want to miss because normally we only have 1v1 content, but now you actually have your teammates at your back and every decision that you make is not just about you anymore.
Look for more news on Street Fighter League later this year. It's Oki time. What's going to happen? Nice. He checks it. He checks the movement. What's happening?
It's so good.
Let's not forget, the Intel World Opening is happening right now. Top players representing 11 regions around the world are competing for their place in the World Finals happening next month. Be sure to check out the official website for more information, including current standings and broadcast schedule.
To commemorate this event, everyone who logged in during this period will receive an exclusive competitor title and dojo object. You do not want to miss this.
I highly recommend everyone to stay tuned for future Capcom Pro Tour updates on the Capcom Fighters channel.
And again, we've had so many events so far. We started off with the Japan region. We've had a couple of more events going on afterwards, but the action does not stop. In fact, we're going to be continuing off with the Midwest region for the Capcom Pro Tour. I know you're definitely excited about that.
100%. I mean, of course, your boy is from Ohio. Make sure you guys tune in to see the tournament.
You do not want to miss some of the best Street Fighter V players in the world compete head-to-head.
So it's you.
I dare you to find better Street Fighter. I dare you.
This is a game about being a world warrior. Capcom
Tournament play.
Obviously, they got a rivalry.
I'm the best in the world.
This game has changed the lives of so many people here.
Nice.
The pop-off! That's what I'm talking about.
I told you it's gonna go to the limit, and I ain't lying to the beat.
This is the ultimate Street Fighter V experience. This is Capcom Pro Tour.
Thanks, guys. It's been a really exciting season so far, and I can't wait to see how this plays out on the road to Capcom Cup. Remember to check out Capcom Fighters' Twitch and YouTube channels for more information and to watch the latest matches. So that's a wrap for Capcom at E3 this year. Let's recap what we all saw. Resident Evil Village is back with the latest installment of the survival horror experience and RE-verse as part of the franchise's 25th anniversary. We have new adventures to embark on in the world of Monster Hunter with Monster Hunter Stories 2, Wings of Ruin, and Monster Hunter Rise. And don't forget to go back in time with the great Ace Attorney Chronicles to tap into the family history of Phoenix Wright and solve new cases. Finally, don't miss out on the esports fun. Make sure you catch the latest matches with Capcom Fighters. There really is something for everyone here today. But don't go anywhere yet. Join the conversation on Twitter and make sure you check out the Capcom virtual booth on the E3 portal to watch all these videos again and more. I'm Rachel Querico, aka Seltzer. Thank you for being part of the Capcom experience at E3 this year.